Jesus way,
oh, the Jesus way,
is the way of peace.
is the way of peace.
Oh, the Jesus way,
Oh, the Jesus way,
is the way of peace.
is the way of peace.
Oh, the Jesus way is the way of peace. When he is king, all wars will cease. May his peace begin with me. I'm gonna beat my sword
Gonna beat my sword
into a plow.
into a plow.
Gonna beat my sword
Gonna beat my sword
into a plow.
into a plow.
Gonna beat my sword into a plow. Christ is king in my life now. May his peace begin with me.
If you were fortunate enough to someday go to the nation's capital, we're talking about Washington, D.C., you'll have the chance to see a lot of historical things. Just the Smithsonian Institute can keep you busy for many days all by itself. As a Brethren, it's quite amazing to realize that there's a Church of the Brethren congregation within blocks of the nation's capital. And you can see the statue of the Capitol building from the front yard of the church. It's a small congregation that's committed to continuing the work of Jesus, peacefully, simply, and together. For a small congregation, there are lots of things going on. The congregation has 3 pastors, but it is a free ministry, and they rely on other jobs for their livelihood, which, by the way, is the way it used to be in many churches. There are also 3 Brethren service workers involved in the congregation's ministry. 4 days of the week, the church serves as a soup kitchen to feed those in need of a good meal. With this program, we are going to venture to 337 North Carolina Avenue Southeast in Washington, D.C. to check it out. Today, we are meeting with Brethren volunteer service workers Jesse Winter and Katie Furlow, and also Free Minister Nathan Hosler. Katie and Jesse, thanks for taking the time to be with us on Brethren Voices. Can you give us a rough sketch about yourselves? Have you always been Brethren?
Yeah, I grew up Brethren, and I'm happy now to be contributing to the work of the church as I'm doing here in the office. My home church is Westminster Church of the Brethren in Maryland, and I went to school at Bridgewater College in Virginia, and this is my 2nd term of BVS. I'm serving right now at the Office of Public Witness, and last year I served at Snowcap Food Pantry in Portland, Oregon.
I have also always been in the Church of the Brethren. I grew up going to the Monte Vista Church in Southwest Virginia for the first 18 years of my life, and then I went to Bridgewater College where I stayed with my Brethren roots through various clubs and activities and things like that, and then immediately after college joined BVS and came here to the Office of Public Witness and just started my 2nd year.
After college, most people are wanting to get out and start earning money to begin paying off all those college bills. But you started by volunteering with Brethren Volunteer Services. Tell us about that.
I'm not really sure that there was ever a conscious decision of the time that I knew that I was going to join BVS. I had always heard about it growing up as a kid, being in the church, and then when I was in college, it just felt like a really logical next step for me because I majored in sociology and knew that I wanted to help people, but I wasn't quite sure what that was going to look like as a career. And so it was a really good next step for me.
BVS has many different service opportunities. What led you to Washington, D.C.?
I did, and I actually really wanted to go abroad and serve in Northern Ireland, and that wasn't quite an option, and they had discussed the potential to go to Croatia. And that didn't quite fit with me either. And I didn't know about this project here until I got to my orientation last fall. And it was the list of options that were given to me. And in college, I had done a fairly large project on food security and food stamp programs and community gardens and things like that, and saw that this was a new project that no one had ever participated in before. And it just felt like a really great fit for me to be able to take what I had learned in college and then expand it a little bit further and be able to put what I had learned to use.
Jesse, we know you spent a year in BVS in Portland. Tell us about that and how it went.
I started in Portland last fall, and when I was there, I was working at Snowcap Community Charities, and I was working in their warehouse. And so Snowcap, they do lots of different things. They have a clothing program, but their main program is a food pantry. So I was in the warehouse bringing in donations from people and coordinating volunteers who are coming into the food pantry and helping out, and just making sure that the day-to-day work in the food pantry got done. So a lot of the times I was restocking shelves where there's food. So sometimes we would have lots and lots of produce, and some days you just don't have that kind of stuff. So sometimes bringing canned goods or making sure the produce racks are always filled in. I always really liked doing physical work while doing something good and working with lots of really great volunteers.
In Portland, they have a BVS house with special living arrangements and expectations. What was that like?
Peace Church of the Brethren, they're a very loving and caring church, and they take care of their BVSers very, very well. I lived in the community house with 3 other volunteers, Janet Stan from Indiana, and then 2 German volunteers named Lucas and Melina. And all of us had developed a really strong bond with each other by the end of the year, and a really strong bond with the church. We would go to the church every Sunday, and the people from the church would take us out and see things around Portland and around Oregon, take us on camping trips, and it was just a really great way to round out the BVS experience in Portland.
And you decided to volunteer for another year. What led you to decide that and to go to Washington, D.C. for your second year?
When I finished my BVS term in Portland, my original plan was to go to graduate school, but I decided that I wasn't quite ready for that. And I wanted to have more professional experience, and I also wanted to continue doing good work for the church and for communities generally. And so I decided that I wanted to continue my BVS term by coming to Washington, D.C. and working for the Office of Public Witness. I heard that the position was open, and I also heard that Katie was going to be here. Katie's one of my best friends from college, and it's really great living in a community house with Katie. But the work here is also just really, really great, and I really appreciate the chance to share the voice of the church with people here in Washington who really, really need to hear it.
Katie, did you ever think that you would be living in Washington, D.C., just blocks away from the nation's capital?
It still amazes me on a daily basis that I'm here and doing the work that I am. If you would have asked me 2 years ago what I would have been doing for BVS, working in Washington, D.C. and engaging around policy and encouraging the denomination to be advocates for social change is not what I would have told you that I would have been doing. And it's really meaningful work to be able to take our faith. I think that the Church of the Brethren is in a really unique position, that we are really socially conscious and concerned about justice. And so to be able to take what we believe and put that into practice, into action, and to call our lawmakers to be able to voice that as well. And that's really meaningful.
There is just so much to do in D.C.
You get to sort of revel in the history that is Washington, D.C. There's so many great and amazing historical sites here. There's the Smithsonian, where you can go do things on the weekend. But just being around policymakers and being around these really important people and knowing that we are in an office where our voice actually matters is pretty impactful, and it's a great feeling.
Yeah, I've been in Washington for a little over a year at this point, and I still get really excited when I get to go to the Hill and do things, because it's just such a neat experience and a powerful experience. And seeing the Capitol building when I walk past to go to meetings or events, it's a crazy thing.
What were your hopes and goals in going to D.C.?
I think for me, I had a really big goal to be able to share with folks in the denomination, as well as folks on the Hill, about how important hunger programs are. My job title specifically focuses around food security and hunger programs and that sort of thing. And it's a really vital need in our country. We have so many people who are dealing with food insecurity, and I think that a lot of times that gets really misjudged on who needs it and that sort of thing. So just being able to show folks that people who participate in hunger and feeding programs are everyday folks. It's a really great thing. We have a preschool who just rents space out of the church here. And so practically on a daily basis in the summer when I would be outside just weeding or doing whatever, the teachers and the kids would come through together and see it as they were walking on the way to the park or wherever they were going, because it's just right there on the sidewalk on a fairly busy street, and they would stop and ask, what's this growing or what's that? And that's a really important first step in making sure that people are eating well and eating healthily, is to know where their food comes from and to know what it looks like before it gets put in a can or a jar or whatever.
I've just returned from South Sudan, where there are very serious ongoing food security issues, and tragically, it's also an issue in this country. What is your average day like?
There really isn't an average day, but as a part of our work, all of us are involved with what's called the Washington Interreligious Staff Community, that is made up of offices much like ours, through the Christian faith, the Jewish faith, Islamic, and we work together as coalitions to bring about change and to have a combined voice and a combined power on the Hill. And so I typically find myself at least a few meetings over the course of the week with a few different tables working on domestic hunger or international aid or things like that, and trying to bring a brethren voice and a brethren standpoint to that.
So how does that happen? Do you actually go up to Congress and meet with the representatives and senators?
There are all sorts of different ways to work at getting that word out. So part of what we do is we will go to the Hill and visit with the staff for different Congress people or senators, and try and get our message across either as an office or as part of the Interreligious Staff Coalition. And so we'll talk to folks that way and give them what we want to say. But it's also possible through writing letters, or something that we've been trying to do as an office is to get the entire denomination engaged around advocacy. And whether that's through letter writing campaigns or tweeting their senators to ask for certain legislation to be passed. It can look like a lot of different things according to what needs to be said.
Katie, that's a pretty tremendous responsibility.
A really great opportunity here in DC, especially with my work, being able to have kind of one foot in the legislative world, but also one foot in the world of practical application. And so part of that has come about through establishing our own small garden here at the church through the Going to the Garden program. And we also have a soup kitchen here that's called the Brethren Nutrition Program. And so our original intention was to take whatever produce we grow and give it to the soup kitchen to use. But it's a really small garden, so it doesn't really produce a lot. So a lot of its purpose is also to just show the community that you can build a garden on the side of a sidewalk and have it do something and be a meaningful contribution. So we really wanted to share that with others in the denomination as well. So late in the summer, we had a group from the Elizabethtown Church of the Brethren come down, made up of youth all the way up to individuals who are seniors, and they came and volunteered at the soup kitchen and got to experience hunger firsthand, and then also were able to see the garden. And then we went as a collective group, still in the clothes from volunteering at the soup kitchen, to meet with the staff for Senators Casey and Toomey, the two Pennsylvania senators, to ask them to support the Child Nutrition Reauthorization Bill, which has been passing through Congress for the past several months in order to make sure that kids across the country get access to the food that they need through summer meal programs or after school feeding programs and things like that. And so it was a really great experience to be able to tie all of those pieces together. So I'm actually in a unique position that my BVS position is funded by both the Office of Public Witness and the Global Food Crisis Fund, which is another extension of the Church of the Brethren. And so I am here specifically to address issues of hunger and food insecurity, and also working, we have in the denomination a program called Going to the Garden that to this point has allowed congregations to apply for up to $1,000 of grant funding to start or supplement community gardens. And so just trying to bolster that and strengthen that program.
Is that a team effort, or are you each working independently on different issues?
Generally, our portfolios don't overlap. So while Katie is focused more on food and social justice issues related around food security and things like that, I tend to focus more on pretty much anything that Nate, our boss, isn't doing. So right now I'm doing a lot of work around Syrian refugees. I'm also doing a lot of work in criminal justice reform and planning Christian Citizenship Seminar, which is a big conference for youth in the Church of the Brethren to come to Washington, D.C. and learn about advocacy and learning how they can take a role in their government and giving that Christian voice that the world needs to hear. And so this year we're focusing on mass incarceration and racism for Christian Citizenship Seminar. And so my work in criminal justice sort of overlaps with that. So it's a learning tool for me. And then it's also just a general advocacy thing that people in the church do care about.
Tell us about this year's event and what's coming up.
So CCS is going to be taking place in April of 2016. And it starts out in New York City. And there the youth will have a chance to do lots of sightseeing and things, but it's also a place where they can prepare for coming to Washington, D.C., where they'll be doing hill visits like we do every once in a while here at the office. So they'll actually be going in and talking to senators and representatives and trying to talk about the importance of addressing the issues of mass incarceration and racism therein.
Jesse Winter and Katie Furrow, thanks for being with us on Brethren Voices.
Thanks so much for having us.
I was glad to share.
Nathan Hosler, one of the 3 members of the free ministry team of the Washington City Church of the Brethren, will be joining us soon. But first, here's a message from Heifer International.
Hi, I'm Alton Brown, and I used to have a goat. Where did my goat go? Well, it went to a family who really needed it, just like the heifer cow I used to have and the water buffalo, which was really too big for my place anyway. Now, why send livestock? Why not say tractors? Because giving an animal is like giving someone a small business. All that wool, the milk, the eggs turn into income for medicine, school, clothing, a better home, a sustainable livelihood. It even produces fertilizer for crops. And of course, it makes more livestock, because animals make baby animals. That's what they do. The next thing you know, the family that you gave your gift to is passing on the gift of the animal's offspring to another family who does the same thing, and so on, until pretty soon you have helped to lift an entire community out of poverty, all with your gift to Heifer International. That is a recipe for lasting change.
We are meeting with an actual free minister, Nathan Hosler, one of 3 at Washington City Church. A free minister is a volunteer who actually has a regular job. To be involved in the Washington City Church of the Brethren is quite a significant responsibility. And just 3 blocks away from the nation's capital. What's it like being so close to the political nerve center of the nation?
Well, I moved here from Nigeria, so there's a great deal of difference from that. I also grew up in, out in the country in Pennsylvania, so there's also a great deal different from that. But it's, DC is actually, especially Capitol Hill area in the near northeast where I live, it's actually kind of more like a neighborhood, it feels like to me, than a big city. I mean, it's, relatively low because there's height restrictions, so it's not like New York City. I know most of my neighbors in my the community I live in. And so it feels a lot like, to me it feels like a very large neighborhood. Yeah, but there's certainly a lot of things happening. So when I was at a working group meeting on Haiti this morning up on K Street. So people know of K Street as the place where, if you say K Street in DC, it's sort of like a code word for lobbyists, but it's not only lobbyists. But so I was up on K Street at a meeting on Haiti, and I was biking down, and I couldn't go on the street I was going to come on because there was a motorcade.
And a motorcade went right by?
I couldn't tell who it was, but it was big enough that it was I'm not sure if it was Obama, but it was someone fairly high up. It was, probably 20 or 30 cars, and, they blocked all the streets. Pedestrians couldn't even walk. So, there's just sort of things like that which are kind of interesting, but it's not all that disruptive. We're on the House side of Capitol Hill. Fairly regularly, you will see members of Congress, in restaurants. We saw Rubio, I guess maybe last year in a restaurant just down the street, and you kind of see people occasionally like that. So I guess that's not normal, but it's also not necessarily. It's another person with you can tell even if you don't know their face because they wear a particular type of pin. So you can always tell who the Congress people are. So that even if you don't know their names, you can sort of pick them out.
Give us a sketch of your congregation, its size, the ministry.
There's only one congregation actually in the district, in sort of Washington D.C. The district has set boundaries. It's only Church of the Brethren actually in the district, the only congregation. There are several that are sort of on the edges of what we sometimes call the greater D.C. area. So you have Arlington Church of the Brethren, Drainesville is not too far away, Manassas, Hyattsville, which is called University Church of the Brethren, University Park Church of the Brethren, sorry. So there's several out around, but we're the only one in the district. And the building has been here since 1899. They built, so back then that's not really all that long after the Capitol building was even finished. And they've been here since then. We're at our 120th year, so they started another part of the city for a few years. But the congregation's been here since then. They probably peaked in their as the sort of size of the congregation in the 40s or 50s. And as of about 2 years ago now, I'm one of the pastors here. So we went back to what I prefer to call free ministry. What we used to call free ministry, now we call plural bivocational ministry. So there are 3 of us who are pastors here at the church as one of my other roles.
Tell us what it's like to be an inner city church in Washington, D.C.
So you have some very wealthy areas. So Capitol Hill now you have, just across the street from our office, a house just sold for over $1 million, and that's pretty typical. But then you also have most people we know on Capitol Hill are, homeless or in very difficult kind of spots and need assistance with food. So you have this sort of interesting dynamic. It's also, we're a very small congregation. We've had this ministry of kind of feeding and helping to bring food to the community for many years, and now we're really require a lot of community support. So both from brethren churches outside the city, people come in. I think earlier Katie noted about Elizabethtown Church of the Brethren coming down from Pennsylvania. That happens fairly regularly. We also have local community groups that come and serve weekly or monthly. They help kind of prepare food and serve the food and clean up. We also have there's a Jewish group called Hill Havara who started volunteering with us. There's an older adults group. I think they're called the Sages from this Hill Havara, and they started volunteering with us. And from this relationship, they actually started renting space from us for their Hebrew school. So now we have our Sunday morning service, in the sanctuary, and sort of all around us in the church is Hebrew schools happening. And then actually this space is our chapel. They rent this once a month for Shabbat services on Saturdays.
You have a soup kitchen and serve a meal 4 days a week, Monday and Tuesday as well as Thursday and Friday. That's a big project. And I would imagine one that requires a dedicated group of volunteers as well as a steady food supply. How's that all set up?
So we have someone who is, her name is Karen Nessman. She's actually a Bridgewater grad. She came about 2 years ago now as our food ministries coordinator, and she does some of the cooking sometimes. But then we also have a Brethren volunteer service worker who works with her and kind of does the day-to-day actual cooking. And then they have volunteers. So part of CARE's role is to help organize those volunteers and make sure we have enough volunteers. Also, we have a number of partnerships for food. So there's a Eastern Market is near here. It's a historic market, been here for quite a long time. We build a relationship with us, and they essentially donate. We also have some partnerships with a bakery, and other churches collect food for us, and we buy some of the food. But there's sort of patched together in a bunch of different ways.
For the Office of Public Witness, do you have recommendations for being engaged in public witness?
There are many ways that you can engage with us, so whether on issues of Nigeria, issues of drones, statelessness in the Dominican Republic, but there are also many, many ways that congregations are doing really great work in their communities. And some of the ways we can engage is hearing from those communities what they're doing, and sometimes we can support that, sometimes we can just talk about it. For some people, it's exciting for me to say, so on Tuesday I went to a briefing and then went to a working group meeting to talk about policy details about, say, immigration or Nigeria. That's interesting to some people, but for most people, they're much more interested to hear that there's a congregation in Illinois that's doing very interesting work with a community that is a food desert, so there's not enough food, and they're doing that work, and they're trying to tie this into larger issues of racial justice and criminal justice reform, and all these pieces. And so we can add something to that, but we really need to hear about it. So for me, the sort of our tagline that we put out is seeking to live the peace of Jesus publicly. So we are seeking to figure out what it is, what it means for us to live the peace of Jesus publicly, and do that as an office, but also do that as a congregation here in DC, but also find out who else is doing that and tell about it, but also in some ways support them. So I would say the best way to connect is just to connect to us and let us know what you're doing. And then, we also have action alerts. So on brethren.org, there's a page that's the Office of Public Witness. There are action alerts that, are more, sometimes a reflection. So I was just in Israel, Palestine, I had a reflection on that. Sometimes they're, on Syrian refugees saying, please quickly call your governor or your congressperson to say we want to welcome Syrian refugees. So let's say sign up for our action alerts and email me and tell me the stuff that you're working on. It's good to hear those stories.
Nathan, thanks for being with us on Brethren Voices.
Thank you.
From Capitol Hill, one small church of the Brethren congregation, continuing the work of Jesus simply, peacefully, and together. This is their story, and it's also our story as brethren. This is Brent Carlson, wishing you peace.
All those who tread the path he trod, all those who tread the path he trod, all those who tread the path he trod shall be called the friends of God. May his peace begin with me. Oh, the Jesus way is the way of peace. Oh, the Jesus way is the way of peace. Oh, the Jesus way is the way of peace. When he is king, all wars will cease. May his peace begin with me.